Ladies and gentlemen, Lumberjack Nation, welcome to another episode of the NAU Sports Show. My name is Casey Everett. Thank you so much for watching. Whether you are watching live or on replay, like always, it means a lot for you to spend some time with me and Northern Arizona Athletics. Hey, last Saturday, NAU hosted UC Davis. Now, I'm going to admit the game looked really good through the first half. As halftime, it was tied at 17. Then quarterback one, RJ Martinez, went out, did an injury. Quarterback two, Jeff Widener, went right after him due to injury. Quarterback three, Keandre Wutty, who we haven't seen since the first game of the season, came back in. And I will admit, I think he kind of looked a little scared. He wasn't really passing. He really wasn't doing a lot of anything. Coach took him out, and we saw another true, another true freshman, Nico Hain, and he scored a touchdown for his first time. Final score 40-24. UC Davis went on to win. So here we are, week 10. Currently, NAU is 4 wins, 5 losses, and 3-3 in conference. Now, I believe that definitely takes NAU out of any kind of playoff contention, playoff race. However, NAU still can end the season with a winning record and have a chance to derail another team looking to go into the playoffs. Now, to talk about NAU's next and final home game of the 2021 season, I have former NAU sports editor and Flagstaffian and NAU alumni Lance Hartzler. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. How you been?
I am great. Thank you so much for coming on. I know that you used to live in Flagstaff. You used to do all NAU stuff, and you became a trader and left to Missoula, Montana.
Yes, sir. Obviously, I went to NAU, worked at the student newspaper, spent 3 years at the Daily Sun covering NAU athletics. Now I'm in Missoula covering Montana men's basketball, prep sports, and the Big Sky Conference up here.
Yes. And I'm just joking about the trader part. Hey, everyone needs to make choices to better themselves, so congratulations. How's it going up there?
Man, aside from the bitter cold and daylight savings time that just decided to hit, I have been a fan. Not a fan of it becoming dark at 5 o'clock, but I'll get used to that, I guess.
Right. Definitely. Now, the reason why I have you on is because, like we said, you left Flagstaff, went to Missoula, home of the Grizz. Montana is now coming to NAU. How's that transition been for you?
It's been great. Very smooth, very seamless, very nice to kind of spread my wings a little bit. It's the first time I've ever lived outside of Arizona my entire life. I mean, I'm from Phoenix originally, went to college in Flagstaff, never lived outside the state ever until April when I moved here. So that's a nice transition. It's just a nice change of pace for me.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, let's talk about some athletics. Let's talk about some sports. Number 9, Montana, currently sitting at 7 wins, 2 losses overall, 4 wins, 2 losses in conference, comes to NAU this Saturday. If NAU wins, Montana is out of the playoff race. If Montana wins, then they face Montana State next week and most likely lose.
Do you think they're
That's
out of the
kind of
playoff?
what I'm looking at.
I'm kind of curious. Do you think they're out if they lose to NAU? I don't think that's a guaranteed out.
So, no, I mean, I might be wrong about them being out of the playoff race, but I don't see a 3 or potentially 4 loss team getting into the playoffs if they lose at NAU.
I think they could sneak. I think their resume is still good enough to make it as an at-large. I don't think it's necessarily. It won't be a high seed. They'll be very low, and they'll be like one of the last couple teams in. But I think they could still sneak in because NAU isn't that bad. Montana State, then if they do lose hypothetically 2 straight games to close the season, that's a loss to a good Montana State team, and then a loss to a not bad, not good NAU on the road at its place where NAU can sneak a win. Right. So I don't think that necessarily pops them out. It puts them on the bubble and kind of makes them on that awkward spot.
Got it. So how has Montana looked in your viewpoint?
From what I've seen, I don't cover the team full time. I just watch kind of from the outskirts. That's Frank Gogola, my wonderful coworker, the Missoulian, who covers the team as the beat writer. But I edit most of his stories, so I at least have a working knowledge. They have been riddled with a lot of injuries. They have had really bad freaking injury luck. Basically, their top 2 starting running backs have not played all year. Their starting quarterback, Cam Humphrey, has missed large chunks of the season. He's the guy who led them to the win over UW to open the season in Seattle. He hasn't played much. All that. I think last week was really when he first got his first real game time in a couple of weeks. And behind him are a bunch of freshmen and young guys. And same thing at running back, a lot of freshmen. So they're kind of being led offensively by a bunch of youth because of injuries. All the while they have a stud defense, but their offense is just having to deal with all these injuries. So it's been rough. They win games other than they escaped that Southern Utah game off the heels of basically a blocked field goal. They probably would have lost that game if not for that. And then they had that loss at Eastern Washington, which kind of felt expected. It's hard to win at Eastern Washington. Montana State obviously did it. Obviously beat Eastern Washington last weekend. UC Davis gets to try this weekend. But that's the one loss that you can say, okay, that's all right. Eastern Washington's stellar. That's the one loss that makes sense. Other than that, Montana, they've been riddled with injuries. The team that struggles on offense, that sometimes they look great. They blew the doors off of Northern Colorado. But how much stock do you put into a Northern Colorado team?
Right. What I was surprised to see earlier in the year until I finally watched them more is when they lost to Sac State. No one really knew how good Sac State was until they beat the Grizz and then they blew the wheels off of NAU.
That felt like a surprise, especially because it came on the road in Missoula. That's a tough place to play.
Right. So, there's definitely been some really big surprises this year as who is going to be on top. I will say, since Montana's Bobby Hauck came back, it's kind of been a letdown. In a way, because everyone's saying, he's going to bring us back to the playoffs, or them back to the playoffs, and it hasn't happened yet.
The whole idea has been the Grizz are back. That's the phrase that always gets tossed around. Well, are they? Because what is back for this program? Back for the Grizz is early 2000s national title level. Are they that? They don't look the part at times of a national title winning team, but you never know. Some luck could go their way. I think the game against Montana State to end the year is going to be a great litmus test to see how good they really are. They contended with Eastern Washington. If they contend with Montana State, Montana at their best can be that good, but consistently are they? And how much do you give them the credit for, okay, you've also been dealing with a crap load of injuries?
Right, definitely. What does NAU have to do in order to beat Montana on Saturday?
They have got to find a way to beat that defense, and don't let an offense that has struggled at times beat you. If NAU's defense can stop Montana's offense, that puts them in the game, because Montana's offense has not been very good. So if you can hold that offense to really nothing and you don't beat yourself on the defense and allow that offense to get something going, you give yourself a chance. Now the question is, do you have the ability to beat that defense, which has been really good? I think they're only allowing 13 points per game on the road. That's a tough defense to beat. And NAU, they got a lot of freshmen. That's a lot of freshmen going against a really, really good defense. I mean, I knew Kevin Daniels coming in. I watched him in high school when he played at Glendale. I watched him, I think, twice when he played in preps in Arizona. He's a good player, but man, a freshman running back going against the Grizz defense, that's a tall task, especially when you got a freshman quarterback potentially handing him the ball.
Right. Definitely. Do you have any kind of score prediction?
I went out on a limb. Every week at Missoulian, we do a staff picks in our Grizz Game Day special section. I was the only reporter of the three of us, me, Frank Agola, and sports editor Bill Spells, to pick the Grizz to lose to Eastern Washington. I went out a limb this week saying that NAU is going to pull the upset.
Good man.
I just think I covered a lot of NAU games. I watched a lot of wild stuff happen in the Sky Dome. It feels like this is the exact type of wild game that NAU will win. They win these type of games when NAU isn't that good. They're like 4-5. They win a random game over a good team. This is the week to do it. They didn't do it against UC Davis. Montana kind of checks all the boxes. A struggling offense, but a great defense. NAU could have a day and somehow surprise. I think it won't be a blowout. No, I think it's only going to be a one-touchdown NAU win. I think it's either a one-touchdown NAU win or the Grizz escape like they did against Southern Utah by like one score.
Right, definitely.
But I am predicting I think NAU might pull a shocker.
I think so too. Plus, history proves itself. Montana hasn't had the best of luck in the Dome.
It's a tough place to play. Montana travels well, and their fans are abundant when they come to Flagstaff, but that's a tough place to play.
It is. It really is. Now, let's switch gears for a little bit here. Let me go here. There we go. Let's talk about something that you are very, very proficient about, and that is basketball.
That's more my speed. Yeah.
Tonight is the beginning, the opening games for Big Sky, at least most of the teams.
Yep.
NAU starts tonight in Tucson at 8:30 to face University of Arizona. Montana at 6:30 plays at home and hosts Dickinson State. I'm guessing that's D2.
They are NAIA, I believe, actually.
NAIA. Okay. All right. So here's my question. How does Montana look to you?
They are young, but not. They have a lot of guys that played a ton as underclassmen the past 2 seasons, and now they have to take that experience and mature. They brought in some experience like Scott Blakeney, who used to play at Idaho. He's a 5th-year senior. He obviously had played with Idaho on some really, really, really bad Idaho teams, but he's a good player. He was one of their best players over the last couple of years. He's a nice injection of senior leadership who's brought a lot of talent who's brought a lot of experience from the Big Sky. One guy in particular that I personally think will have a very strong season is Linnell Martin Jr. He's a JUCO transfer. He is that prototypical wing that you just want to go chuck threes and play defense, and that's what the Grizz kind of missed last year. They were a bunch of guards and a bunch of bigs. Now they got a wing who can actually kind of fill that middle role of I'm not a 6'2 guard. I'm more of a 6'5 rangy wing who can defend multiple positions. So now they have more flexibility. If I picked Montana, I think 4th in the preseason poll, and I think that's a fair spot for them to finish. It can go either way. If that maturity really blossoms and those young guys, at least 1 or 2 of them really pop and become that all Big Sky level talent one of them needs to be, that's a good team. If not, they're still good, but they're not going to be top 4 good. It's kind of that awkward spot of like their floor is very high, but their ceiling is dependent on a couple of guys really reaching all Big Sky heights because they haven't had that. They didn't have a all Big Sky guy last year. They didn't have anyone on all preseason team because they had 3 guys average 10 points per game last year. They had a lot of dudes who were really, really solid, but no star talent, so to say.
Right. ESPN last week came out with a list of notable players that is really going to make a difference on all the different teams. And NAU Jalen Cone was on that list, transfer from Virginia Tech. Now, NAU still has a lot of other big men like Aguic and Maines. And if you look on the roster for the first time in probably 3-4 years, almost everyone is above 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". I mean, there is a lot of height on this team, and it's really something that I'm excited to look at and see, and kind of see how they do against an Arizona team and a Washington team right off the bat. What is your take on NAU?
Jalen Cone is going to shoot the ball 30 times a game. That is my that was my take. That was my take when he signed, because it came off the heels of Abdalovich and Cameron Shelton transferring to Pacific and to Loyola Marymount, respectively. There are not a lot of guys on that team with a lot of experience in terms of being a main shot creator, shot taker. Jalen Cone can be that, coming from Virginia Tech, where he was a really good player, really solid basketball player, very high three-point shooting, 3-point field goal percentage, a lot of hype coming around him when he signed. My thing is, I'm scared that he's the only guy, and it's going to run into the same problem they had last year with Cam Shelton. No one else could create, so Cameron Shelton had to do everything. The difference being Jalen Cone's more of a three-point shooter. He's a little smaller. He's not the same player. Obviously, Cameron Shelton was the type of guy that's going to dive into the lane head first and make a play. He might occasionally hit a jumper. Jalen Cone's a chucker, and he's going to get his chance to put up numbers, but who fills in around him? Do some of their freshmen. I forgot the freshman guard from Wisconsin that Burkhardt loves. He's supposed to be a solid player. Can Nick Maines continue to be really solid as a stretch big? Can Aguic develop defensively? Oh, Mr. Justice Rainwater, the transfer from Florida Gulf Coast, who I think could be really fun for them. He's a freak athlete. He's a dunker, a rebounder. How good can he be? They have some dudes.
Yeah, so I actually just learned last night from Burkhardt that Rainwater is no longer on the roster.
Ah, well, that's a change.
Yes, it is, because I was looking at him, it's like, where is he? Yeah. And so I texted Coach last night, and I said, hey, what's going on? And he says, unfortunately, he is not. No answers were given as to why.
That is a change then. That was a big piece for them coming in. That added a nice depth to their big rotation that they were missing. I believe they still have Carson Tout, I assume.
Yes, they do.
And that was going to be a nice rotation because they needed someone else with Aguic. So it would have been Aguic, Rainwater, Tout, Maines. Now it's just the 3 of them. And I thought last year covering them, they were kind of thin with just the trio. Yeah. But you still got Jay Green. I believe you still have a handful of other wings that could be solid. But it's just a matter of how does that – it's a new team. You lost your 2 best playmakers on the outside. And how do you fill in those voids?
Definitely. Now, who do you have winning the conference this year?
It's Southern Utah or Weber State. That was my preseason pick. But I think Montana or Montana State or Northern Colorado, any of that top 5 can make a run. I personally picked Southern Utah on paper because they bring the most experience back. They bring almost the exact roster that won the regular season last year. They lost in the tournament to Montana State, I believe. But there's no Eastern Washington next to them. Right. Eastern Washington was stupidly loaded last year. They were the favorite. I believe it's between Southern Utah, Weber, NoCo, Montana State, but Southern Utah and Weber are the top 2. Weber State has some really fun newcomers that could make them scary. It's just another question of how do they gel.
Do
You can't
you
really.
agree?
It's hard to go against Randy Ray and what he does at Weber, so that's why I kind of have them high.
Do you agree with NAU being put at 9?
I actually do. I don't. NAU lost. It's hard to believe in a team that lost a guy like Cameron Shelton. If they still had Cameron Shelton and they added Jalen Cone to that, if they had Avdalovic somehow, that's a top 16. That's a really, really good team. But you run into a similar situation. You just lost an all Big Sky level guard, Cameron Shelton. And now you replace him with Jalen Cone, who's another high usage, really talented guard, but there's not much else around him.
Right.
And that's unfortunate because that roster, they are having to rebuild every season. And that's kind of been the trend with NAU for a long time. They haven't been able to sustain anything because they're constantly rebuilding.
Right. Montana game 2 is literally in my backyard. They are coming to Montana. They're coming to Mississippi State. How do you think they're going to do?
I haven't looked much into Mississippi State, but I do know that they have a familiar face for NAU fans who coached them, Mr. Ben Howland, who, of course, coached NAU to an NCAA tournament appearance back in the 1990s. So other than that, that's all I know. I haven't really looked that far into it, but it's a road game at a Power 5 school in the SEC. You just got to hope that Montana can hang with them. They almost knocked off Arizona last year. They were really just a couple points off that. You just hope they can – they just got to hope they can hang with them and not get blown out. That's what you hope in those type of games. And if you can sneak an upset, that's even better.
Right, definitely. All right, Lance. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Like always, it's been a while, but I know that you will be the perfect guy to come on, being in Montana now. So before I let you go, is there anything that you would like to say?
No, that's it. Follow me on Twitter at Lance_Hartz. Same thing as the name you see on here. Appreciate you having me on, man. Miss being in Flagstaff and miss being around NAU. I'm glad I get to be on and talk a little bit about Big Sky Hoops, though.
Hey, sounds good. We'll talk to you real soon, okay?
Thanks, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And like always, I will talk with you next week. Always remember, never forget, root NAU, go Jacks.